we overwhelmed you or disturbed you? Or confused you?
I have a follow-up on the conversation yesterday about sort of everything is an opinion and nothing is the truth, or not necessarily. There was another saying said earlier that same evening about by Swami Sopananda about that, the different ways up the hill to the peak of the mountain. So the question is, well, maybe the way up is an opinion, but do we all agree about what the peak is, and is that the truth? Are there certain truths that everybody can agree with, that this is the moral thing or this is the good thing, and then what we really disagree with in terms of opinions are the ways there. Would you agree with that?
Well, in my opinion, everything is an opinion. So I don't know how many people you know that have gotten to the top of that mountain. And if you hear, let's say you know 5, you probably know 0. And most of us, some of us share the opinion that there are many paths to the top. And there are people that share the opinion that there's only one path and the others are all heretical, right? And they don't think those are opinions. They know that theirs is the only way. And in a way where we have the opinion that there are many ways up to the top of that mountain. I'm not sure when you get to the top of that mountain, for me, that's in the space of the oneness of life, that you've reached that. I don't know if you can talk about that. I don't know. You are in that one space, so you're just doing at that point. And I don't think you'll find different opinions. I don't think people at that point are arguing about what's the best way of getting up here. They're at a place of being and doing. That's my opinion.
Bonsoir. Thank you first for your
Maybe somebody could lower that mic for her.
Thank you for sharing your experience. I have been traveling sort of the similar road. I have been for 40 years working on the issue of violence against women and women's safety in cities. So I was on the first feminist pioneers in the 70s. And the way I worked with women was exactly what you're talking about, starting with the experience of women and being in support of their experience. And this has been an amazing learning. I'm still, 40 years after, very moved to see that the things I was witnessing 40 years ago are still happening now, and in particular ways. I am at the mentor stage now, and so I am sort of changing life, and here is the beginning of a new life. And 2 days ago you talked about enlightenment, and my friend here said the top of the mountain, but you talked about enlightenment as a process, and you said it deepens and deepens. So for me it was a bit strange for you to say enlightenment deepens and deepens, so because I see enlightenment as something in the light, so maybe more up the mountain. So I would like just to know, from your personal experience, from your understanding of what enlightenment means, if you could just share a little bit about that. And also I've read in the training manual saying of Swami Shivananda, saying, talking about enlightenment on the mind and illumination of the soul. So if you could maybe just share with us a word or two on these two concept or experience. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Enlightenment is a word that's used very differently in different traditions, right? And so it's very important to understand what somebody means by that word. To me, it's important to get a sense of what do you mean by that word. And I try to describe what I meant by it. And that's not what everybody means by it. But what I mean by enlightenment, and this comes through my Zen tradition, and of course I could say it comes from my Buddhist tradition, but I studied in a Zen school, and even if we go to another school, like a Tibetan school, they may have different opinions than what the Zen teachers have done as opinions. But at any rate, and I mentioned this Shingon priest, Kobayashi, who said that the depth of a person's enlightenment can be realized, can be seen by how they serve others or take care of others. So we say that enlightenment is an experience of the oneness of life. And that can be deepened, and I tried to give the example of the enlightenment of Bernie realizing that that this is all one thing. But that's, and I can see if Bernie's enlightenment has stopped at that place, because if I look at him and if all he's taking care of is himself, that would say, according to Kobayashi, that he is enlightened to the realm of himself. If I look at somebody who's taking care of the family, like a mother gives birth, and at the time of birth, there's no separation with the child. The child does something, the mother immediately reacts because they're one. With time, they become separate. But if I look and I see the mother taking care of the child in that way, we can say the enlightenment experience is the mother and child. If I look at His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in my opinion, he is serving the world. He's not serving just the Tibetan schools he's involved with. He's serving the world. So for me, his enlightenment is at the connection of seeing the oneness of the world. So where each of us are, we are at a stage of enlightenment. In my opinion, the way I think of it. And that stage of enlightenment is what part of the wholeness of life are we connected to? And there's ways of helping us to connect to a larger spheres. And they're not all strictly spiritual. Well, perhaps they are in some sense. Let me give you a little example. A few years ago at Auschwitz, our Auschwitz retreat, we bring together as many different cultures as possible. Because the Auschwitz retreat is about how we deal with the other, how we deal with others. Because that's a place where gypsies were killed, and Catholics were killed, and handicapped were killed, and Catholics were killed, and Polish intellectuals were killed, and of course many, many Jews were killed.
Homosexuals.
The gays were killed there. It was a huge place of killing. So that retreat is about how do we deal with others, and we bring all those different cultures, maybe 20 different countries, 10 different religions, gays and handicapped, and we bring as many as we can. We've had the queen of the gypsies at that retreat many times. We bring survivors, and we bring children of SS people that ran camps. It's a wide range. And we work with the differences that come up each day. Differences come up. People get upset with each other, and stuff comes up, and we work with that. in terms of way of counsel. We have different tools. A couple of years ago, in my council, we have we break into small groups. It's usually about 100 people at those retreats, anywhere from 100 to 150. And we break into groups of 10, and each morning we'll deal with what's coming up. And a few years ago in my group, a woman said that this will be the 20th, or 19th year or 20th year that we're doing this retreat. We do it annually. She said she had been thinking of coming to the retreat for 15 years, but she was afraid to come. Her grandfather was SS and ran a camp. She said she was afraid she would meet a Jewish person or a Polish person. There was a Polish man in my group. He was from Krakow. He lives in Krakow. And he said that he had been thinking of coming for 10 years to the retreat, but he was afraid to. He was afraid he would meet a German person. So after about 4 days, they were hugging each other. This woman, for 15 years, kept any connection with a Jew or a German, a Jew or a Pole, out of her life. So her connections might have been whatever they were, but they certainly didn't include any Jews or Poles. The Polish man, he kept away from any German. Now those connections were made. So I'm defining enlightenment, and of course I have a whole lineage of teachers who define it this way, is the oneness of life or the interconnectedness of life, and that it's a gradual process which we can deepen and deepen, which means we can connect more and more to the wholeness of life. And if we can connect the whole thing, in my mind, we're at the top of the mountain. But it's a long path.
Merci beaucoup.
It's time to. We've run out of time. If anybody wants to spend a year with us, we might be able to. But at any rate, is there one last question? Or shall we end it? The Swami. You want the mic?
Evening, Bernie.
Good evening.
Before I ask my question, I just want to say there was a Yankees player, and I'm by no means a Yankees fan, but there was a Yankees player named Bernie Williams. And when he would step up to bat, the whole stadium would chant, "Burn, Bernie, burn." And you are on fire, man.
My wife is a Yankee fan.
Excuse me.
And I am a Dodger fan.
Well, I would just wanted to say that phrase is much better suited to you, and I hope that you stay on fire for many years to come.
He was a very great player, Bernie Williams.
Yes. My question is, can one bear witness to oneself? And if so, what does that entail?
Sure. If you asked me that 40 years ago, I would have right off the bat said meditation as a way of bearing witness to oneself. A very famous Zen master, sort of the founder of the school that I was part of, that we were part of, Soto sect. Now we're part of the Zen Peacemakers, but I trained in the Soto sect. He has a interesting line. He says, to study Buddhism is to study to self, to study the self. to study the self is to forget the self. And to forget the self is to be enlightened by all things. So my first thing would, if you had asked me that a while back, would be to meditate, and in fact, I would say that, and you know, there's many beautiful koans, but also within Hinduism, who are you? Is a famous thing to sit with and contemplate. The question of who am I is very broad spread in the spiritual traditions. Now I would also add to that, say that that's a good practice, but also to see who you are, get involved in the fires of the world, and you'll see more of who you are. You know, jump into the places you're afraid of, and you'll see who you are.
Thank you.
Yes, she's getting him a mic.
Can you explain what do you mean by forgetting the self?
Well, I wanted to go past my initial thought. The initial thought of what's generally meant by that is to let go of all the attachments to any of your ideas or any of your concepts. You know, sometimes the words are almost simplistic, like, but how do you do that? How do you do that? And that's what's making me think. As I get older and older, I try to see these important phrases that are implanted in my head in a simpler and simpler way. And you know, it's, I mean, another sort of obvious answer is to experience the oneness of life, and if you do that, then you have forgotten the self.
But what are the things, Bernie, that cause us to, for a moment even, to lose our sense of self, to be like, you know, like that, like, huh? You know, that kind of, where all my ideas of myself just for an instant just come down.
So those instants happen. I think that those we all know and happen in all our practices. They can happen through meditation. They can happen through in Zen. The teachers throughout the years came up with all kinds of techniques to help that happen. So he's not a Zen guy, but we put him in our Zen lineage. Nagarjuna, who was an Indian philosopher, he would try to get you to forget the self by everything you're saying. He would say, "That's not it. That's not it." That's one technique. Rinzai, who was a famous Chinese Zen master, he would try to get you to forget the self by screaming. He would shout, and in that shout, you forget the self in that instant. another Chinese Zen master, Toksan, would hit you with a stick. And if you, whatever you said, give me the answer, whatever you said, he would hit you. If you didn't say anything, he would hit you. Those are all techniques of trying to get you to forget the self. I developed a technique called plunge. I take those who want to go with me into places where the brain can't function. It's overwhelmed by it, like going into the streets or going to a place like Auschwitz. Somebody wrote a letter recently asking me, why do I have to come to your retreat? I can just get a ticket and go see it. And a lot of people go to Auschwitz. And as you know, a lot of the kids all go in groups. But people that go to Auschwitz, they get horrified, or they say, never again, and they leave. We stay and bear witness and work within. And the first day, we try to, we bring you to all the different places, try to overwhelm the brain to get you to a place of not knowing, or a plunge, where you've forgotten the self. Those are in our case, they're maybe a little longer than instantaneous. How do you get to a place where that's how you live your life? I would say that there's very few people, and if you recognize them off the bat, that they're, it's like you're not, what you recognize, I believe, in my opinion, what we recognize is they're not leading their life